Hello and welcome to Birmingham Cameras Facebook Live. This is the latest edition of the live streams from our store, and this one is being run in conjunction with the guys in Canon Ireland. Now, although this is not the first live stream that we've done from the store, this is the first time we've done them under the new COVID guidelines and regulations that we're working within. So what that means is that the last few times you've seen us live, we have been operating under an appointment service, and the store was open for click and collect and online only. Now we're open to the public. We're open 9 to 5:30 Monday to Friday and 10 to 4 on a Saturday, and anybody is welcome to come in to us, join us, come in to us for a demonstration, come in and see the selection that we have. Anything that you want to come in and talk to us about, you're more than welcome to do so. Of course, we're still doing online click and collect, online delivery service, and we still have free delivery on orders over €100. Now, with us being in the middle of the working day, we've had to make a few adjustments to our store. You will get some behind the scenes shots later in the broadcast of how exactly our store is looking at the moment. But we are live. We do have a store here that is open. We've just locked the door here and pulled our shutter down a little bit so I can still see out into Dublin City. If you're walking by the quays, you can give us a wave in. You won't be on camera, but we might wave back to you if you get our attention. Now, aside from all that, what we're here to talk about today is the Canon Eosr system and shooting portraits with the Eosr mirrorless system. And we have a very special guest with us today to do that. Our guest today is Michael O'Sullivan, who is a professional photographer who has done a lot of work with the Canon system. So, Michael, welcome. How are you?
Thank you, Ryan. I'm really good, thank you. Delighted to be here.
That's good.
So I'm glad that we are under newer restrictions now, so I can be here. It's traveling across all the way from foreign.
Yeah, we thought we might have to remote you in at one stage down from the People's Republic of Cork, but thankfully we managed to get you up and join us for today. So we're very happy for you to do so.
Delighted.
Thank you very much.
Delighted.
So yeah, look, when Canon asked us to do the live stream a few weeks ago and mentioned that it would be part of Canon Week, which is actually what's going on at the moment, we decided, we wanted to use somebody who was Irish based. A lot of times, people can go to UK or foreign based guys. So we want to use somebody Irish based, somebody who we knew, somebody who we had maybe worked with before, at least were aware of their work. And your name came into both mine and the guys in Canon Ireland's head. So we said, look, let's ask Michael if he's available. So be it. So it's great, as we say, that with the restrictions, you can actually join us here in the store rather than, as I say, remoting in, which does present its own issues.
Absolutely, yeah. I won't ask how far down the list I was. I'm just chuffed to be here.
Listen, you are one of the names. Let's just leave it at that. Now, we have here some Canon kit that we're going to talk about in a few minutes.
Yeah.
And people will be able to see the Canon kit that's there. They're sitting on some Canon printers. There's a little story behind this. We put these in for a bit of decoration, the Canon printers. We did chat about what we might talk and present this live stream about, and one of the things we actually were thinking we might do was printers, because we have worked together with some camera club presentations about printing and print workshops, but we weren't sure whether we have any printers or not, because there is a worldwide shortage of Canon printers at this moment. Well, all printers, not just Canon printers. We got a few delivered in yesterday, so we said rather than bring them down to the basement, we leave them here on display for everybody to see that if you are in the market for a printer, we have the full range of Canon printers in stock now. We have the Pixel Pro 200, we have the Image Prograph 300 and the Image Prograph 1000. So we have all of those in stock if anybody is interested in them, and we would be happy to give you any information we can, and even refer you on to Michael, who is a whiz at printing and print workshops. So that was a booby trap for you there, Michael.
There you go.
For that. But now, on to what we're talking about today, which is portraits and shooting portraits. You are a commercial photographer generally, and you do stuff commercially for your work and in your day-to-day job, but you also have photography as your hobby as well, and you do some type of different type of work in your kind of personal use as opposed to your commercial use. You have used the Canon system for many years, and you have progressed on through digital SLRs up to mirrorless and the Eosr system. So what we might do first is maybe talk about how you made the change from DSLR to mirrorless, and what you were working with before and what you've progressed onto using now for some of your work.
Okay. pretty simple, really. I mean, I've been shooting Canon SLRs since pre-digital. I just couldn't go back. The first time I remember shooting with a 1N HS, I think was one of the first Canon SLRs I used back in the film days. The feel and ergonomics of that camera, and then followed by the 1V HS, which was the fastest camera in the world at the time. Just how good they felt in my hands, and that's a huge factor in any camera or any system for me. So from that point, I've been shooting, ever since then, been shooting Canon stuff, and I've loved it pretty much every step of the way. It just does what I need it to do. I can predict it really well. I know how it's going to respond in every situation, and that means it's got my back. So I went from there. I didn't go to digital until the 1DS Mark III came out, because I was quite particular about large prints, shooting a lot of slide film. I was doing a little medium format on other systems at the time as well, and the 1DS Mark III was the first camera that allowed me to switch completely, go digital and shoot personal work, fine art work, and commercial work as well. I remember doing one of the first commercial shoots on the 1DS Mark III was for some very large point of sale kind of fashion posters, and it worked out really well. I was blown away with the quality. So then obviously since then, moved through when they switched to the 1DX, I was always a bit of a kind of a high resolution kind of guy. So I stuck with the 1DS Mark III, and then the 5D Mark II and 5.3 and Mark IV, because I didn't really need all of the speed that the 1DX Mark II or 3 were giving. Amazing cameras, incredible cameras though they are. So I was sticking with the above 20 megapixel resolutions and whatnot. And I remember thinking when the 5D Mark IV came out, and I was at an event in Malahide, I think it was, and we were testing the 5D Mark IV, and around the same time we were testing the 1DX Mark III, I think. But one of the things that really blew me away was in live view, how snappy and fast they were as DSLRs. So in the back of my mind, I was thinking, I really can't wait till Canon bring out a mirrorless system. So rather than get involved in the hype that Canon weren't going mirrorless and this, that, and the other, I had a bunch of lenses that I loved. I was, kind of thinking to myself, be patient, because if they implement half that technology in a mirrorless system, I would be obviously very comfortable then. Because at one point I was shooting in a castle in County Galway somewhere, and I was shooting like handheld, really, really slow shutter speed at an event practically in the dark, very high ISO. And I was using the touch shutter on the touch screen in live view on the 5D Mark IV, and it was instant. It was absolutely instant while I was leaning against the pillar to stay sharp. Yeah. So I was kind of thinking, this is the kind of responsiveness I need from my equipment. This is what I get from this equipment. So I kind of waited till the Eos R came out.
Okay, now, just before you go into the Eos R, I already have some questions in my head, so I think it's just a good point to remind people that we will be taking questions at the end. So if anybody has any questions, if anybody wants to make any comments or has any questions for Michael, it can be regarding his equipment or it can be regarding the photos that he takes. We will be asking the questions. They will be all at the end. We do have some spot prizes for some of the questions that are given, and we will also have a prize for the best question that will be chosen by Michael. So if you do have any questions, put them into the comment section there. We will get to them at the end of the live stream. We will also be showing some of Michael's photos shortly, some of his commercial and his personal stuff. So you will hear him referencing some shoots, and some of the stuff that he does, you will see them shortly as well. And finally, just if you are trying to call the store, I can hear the phones ringing in the background. We can't answer yet because we are live, but we will get back to you when we are finished on the live stream here. Now, sorry, Michael, I just said that was a good time to get in about the questions because I'm sure people have plenty, but...
I needed a breath.
Now, so you're saying about the Eos R?
Yeah. I remember all the hype when the Eos R was coming out and the semi-secrecy, should we say. There were, all sorts of rumors and all sorts of information coming out. But one of the things that, kind of sold it for me was that it did seem like, it looked like, in terms of performance, it was like a 5D Mark IV. And the 5D Mark IV, to me, people would argue and say the 1DX series, etc. But for me at the time, and up until recently, actually, the 5D Mark IV was the best camera on the market. Some of the things that, the 5D Mark IV had better than other systems were just things like the ergonomics that I mentioned is a big thing for me. The feel of the camera, forgetting that I have a camera, right? That's important, not having to worry about the camera, but just the responsiveness of the 5D system. And that carried over largely into the Eos R. Now, I also remember at the time, kind of thinking, okay, knowing and having been around for a lot of the history of Canon product launches, etc., I've known them to be a fairly conservative company.
Okay, right.
From that regard, so I was kind of thinking, okay, well, if this is they're dipping their toe in the water and testing the system, and I still use an EOS R in my kit to this day.
Yeah,
I still use it to this day. Sometimes, like I haven't used the R6 much, for example. We get onto those cameras in a second, but the Eos R is a handy camera when I need a lower resolution, say, than the R5. And sometimes you do need and want a lower resolution. For speed, for example, of turnaround and editing and whatever. But I just remember, especially when the second firmware came for the Eos R, I remember kind of thinking, okay, well, this is a really good implementation, because, to be fair, they hadn't been, their autofocus was always stellar, their responsiveness was always stellar, the reliability was always stellar, and the image quality on the 5D Mark IV and then carried over into the Eos R was absolutely fantastic. They didn't implement the eye autofocus as pretty much as well as they did then later on, say in the R5, for example. But you knew that it was a functioning system and it was there. But for me, none of that was that was a bell and whistle. But the actual ability to be able to use the responsiveness of a 5D Mark IV, but to pick focus points right across the screen. The benefits of a mirrorless system, and having to be fair, the viewfinder, the EVF in the Eos R was pretty much a game changer at the time. Even though it was never going to be their top tier camera in the system, it still was a jump in quality for EVFs. So I was absolutely comfortable jumping to mirrorless at that point. So,
like you've mentioned there about the launch of the Eos R, I actually was in the UK when the Eos R was launched. The Canon had a big launch in the UK. I was there with some other Irish dealers and a lot of UK dealers. It was a very big thing. It was their first full frame mirrorless interchangeable lens camera. And I was very, very enthusiastic about it. I was very excited about it. I was like, yes, here we go. This is what we've been looking for from Canon. And it didn't really capture people's imagination as much as I thought it would. It got some negative press initially. Things like what you said, like, like the eye autofocusing not being quite what people maybe wanted or had expected. And then there was a few other things that people were mentioning as well. I personally think with the Eos R, it's a fantastic camera. It was when it was launched. It's even better now with the firmware updates they've brought out. I think the Eos R suffered a little bit by not having the number 5 in the name. I know we have the R5 now, but people used to be in 5D Mark IV, 5D Mark III, 5D series users. Would have been like, this is not going to be the camera for me.
I think people were confused about where it was pitched,
Exactly.
Some people were saying, is it kind of like a 6D?
Yeah.
Is it kind of like a 5D? I mean, to me, it's a 5D Mark IV in mirrorless form.
Well, you've got that. But the other thing about it is, as well, is there were things that mirrorless cameras just couldn't do that DSLRs could at the time the Eos R was launched. You've mentioned the electronic viewfinder, but it's still not an optical viewfinder, which some people are used to. So that will be a change for people. The battery life on mirrorless cameras is not as good as on DSLRs. That's not the Eos R specific. That's for every single mirrorless camera that's out there. But I think the Eos R just kind of got caught with that a little bit and took a little while to catch up. But I still think it's a brilliant camera, and you do too, so there you go.
And the RF lenses.
And the RF lenses, and that's it. And there was a time between when the Eos R came out and the R5 and the R6 got launched. There was a big gap between them.
Yeah.
And a lot of RF lenses got launched in the middle. And some of the guys in Canon will tell you, there was times I wasn't overly nice to them about what I was saying as regards to, they had fantastic RF lenses, but they didn't seem to be getting the body out there that maybe people are looking for if they decided the Eos R wasn't for them. I was like, guys, you're asking us to take in lenses that you've no cameras for. And they were like you said, just be patient. There's something coming and it'll be well worth waiting for. And
boy, did it come.
Well, that's it. And then we had the launch of the R5 and the R6. And there we go. So you are familiar with the R5 and the R6. You said you've not used it too much, but
No, I used the R5 quite a lot. The R6 a bit. I did test the R6 in parallel with the R5, shooting with the R5. I actually did an article for Professional Photo on both cameras at the time to give a comparison of the two. Like, stellar cameras, amazing cameras. They perform exactly the same. There are differences, but obviously then you've got the resolution and the sensor differences and things like that. But the Eos R5, just when you were saying when we were waiting, Canon didn't quite have something to go with the lenses and whatever. And then the things that were slightly lagging in the Eos R, if they were things you were looking for, like the eye autofocus, etc., and the built-in image stabilization, Canon only went and, like the Eos R5 kind of went and leapfrogged pretty much the industry then, to be out in front with the image stabilization and the eye detect. So yeah, that was a nice relief for those of us who were, sticking with our lenses.
When the R5 and R6 came out, when they were launched, when I looked at both of them, I was like, both of these cameras are fantastic. And you say you've shot with both of them. People would be used to 6D series and 5D cameras in the Canon range, and now we're up to R6 and R5. And it's very similar with the SLR and mirrorless with the way the range sits. The R5 is the higher megapixel one, and the more professional, aimed for commercial portraiture studio work, as well as being able to do things like weddings and things like that as well. The R6 maybe wouldn't have the megapixels for some commercial and some studio work, but for wedding photography it's fantastic. As not around the speed of focusing, speed of continuous drive, low light performance, etc. So you've really got a combination there which has brought us up now to where we were with the 6D and 5D series cameras, and we were probably spoiled of them for so long with them being on the market, knowing exactly what they did. And when a model would come out in Canon, like maybe when the 5D Mark IV came out, how it would improve on the 5D Mark III. The R5 and the R6 being the first kind of venture into those type of cameras in mirrorless, they really have, as you say, like gone right back to the front of all the brands, all the manufacturers in what's being offered and what's out there.
Yeah.
As regards to using the equipment now, Michael, you've mentioned RF lenses.
Yeah.
So with the RF lenses, we're still in a stage where there's not the full range of lenses available in RF. So some people are using EF to RF mount adapters.
Yeah.
There's a standard mount adapter, there's a control ring mount adapter, and some people are comfortable using those. You obviously will have used the RF lenses, and you will have used EF lenses with the EF to RF adapter.
Yeah.
Can you tell us if you found any differences between them, or maybe what your preference is? Like, do you prefer using RF lenses? Do you mind having a mixture of both in the kit bag? What way do you go about that?
I have a mixture of both. Like my workhorse focal length range for many years was always, say, either 24 to 70 type lens or a 24 to 105, and I'd always have something wider and something longer for various needs. We'll see some pictures in a minute, and I can say what was used for which. But the RF lenses, the one thing is, I don't know if it's the mount and the enhancements that allowed them to make on the elements and whatever, they're incredibly sharp. I mean, like the 24 to 105 RF workhorse lens that comes as a kit with some of the R bodies and whatnot, like that's like streets above the equivalent L24 to 105 back in the EF series. Both amazing lenses, and I used the 24 to 105 a lot. This one is incredibly sharp. And I think some of it as well is the fact that you're focusing off the sensor all the time on the mirrorless cameras. There's always going to be that higher degree of pin sharp nailed focus
and that's something that like we would have seen as well, and like the issues whereby at times somebody might have experienced a slight bit of front and back focusing. We're focusing off the sensor now, so they're gone.
Nails all that. A lot of those things are a thing of the past, but also I think the RF lenses, they've upped the technology in the game with them. Now, having said that, I still have, say, for example, the 7200 LIS 2.8 Mark II, right? Yeah. That's still my go-to, say, headshot lens, anything where I'm using telephoto range, and I use that with the control ring adapter.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's totally, it's indistinguishable performance-wise from the RF lenses in terms of handling, speed, autofocus. I completely forget. That lens has an adapter on it all the time now. Okay. And I literally completely forget whether I'm changing lens systems or anything like this. It's totally native.
It's good for people to know.
Yeah. And I was worried about it initially.
Like at the end of the day, like what you're saying there about, for example, the 24 to 105 being better than the EF version. Like some of the EF lenses in the L series that are available, some of them were 10, 12, 15 years old. Yeah. And although they are brilliant lenses, and at the time when they were announced and would have been launched, they would have been the pinnacle of what was available. 50 megapixels wasn't a thing back then, like, that kind of way. Like, so, now we are in a situation where lenses are going to go through a different testing, in the testing phase and the development stage of a lens. Bear in mind as well, as you say, when you're focusing off the sensor, there is a slight difference required from the lenses as regards to, like, because the lens is performing, you're actually seeing what the sensor is seeing rather than looking through the lens, and as I say, that does eliminate the likes of front and back focusing. Yeah. And you mentioned you use the adapter on the 7200 lens. If anybody has RF lenses and they're watching it, you will notice that every single one of your lenses has a control ring on it, which is an extra ring. Do you use the control ring at all, Michael? Do you actually use that?
I do. I have it. I have it set to ISO for whenever I know I'm going to be changing ISO. If I'm doing something in a controlled environment like the studio, not so much. But I forget it's there. But I generally have it set, in custom functions for the ISO.
Custom function, okay. So just for anybody who's watching that wouldn't be aware of that, on any of the RF lenses, this is the RF 15 to 35 here. You can turn a control ring on it, and you can program in the menu in the camera. You can actually program it to change various settings. It could be your shutter speed, it could be your aperture, it could be your ISO setting. If anybody does have an RF lens and in Eos R or R5 or R6 and doesn't know how to do it, they can give us a call and we can talk you through it, or we can do a Zoom call if you wish. We won't have 3 or 4 cameras set up for the Zoom call now like we do have here in the live stream, but we'll be able to go through it with you. But you find that it's nice to have that controlling there for you use it for ISO, but sometimes you don't worry about it at all and you just zoom and focus on it.
Exactly. Sometimes the multi-function button, depending what way I happen to be holding the camera at the time, but I always have the control ring set for ISO.
Oh, that's very good. So as regards to your kit, Michael, just before we move on to looking at your photos, is there anything like that you want to maybe add in there, or that you feel maybe people who are watching this should be aware of as regards to when they go to mirrorless? Like, has it helped you in any way, or has it made your life easier as regards to as a photographer?
Yeah, I was.
You shook your hand there and then you said yes.
No, I'm saying as in you have no idea in how many ways, right? To be fair, mirrorless it ticked a lot of boxes for me. I was quite slow for going to mirrorless, but it did tick a lot of boxes for me. Being able to stretch the focus points across the screen like you could in, say in live view previously, right? Being able to use a wider focusing area, things like that. Those were a big thing for me, and it's totally seamless on the mirrorless cameras. Being able to switch between focus modes on the R, the R5 and the R6, using the touch and drag, stuff like that. I was one of the people wanting a joystick on the R5 when it would come out, but I don't use it. I'm always touch and drag.
Okay, interesting.
Because it's become natural to me now.
And did you want the joystick because that was what you were used to,
That's
like in a DSLR? So again, and this kind of goes back to. Like,
I still use it for some menu stuff. Like if I want to keep sometimes you're in front of a client, you don't want to be at your menu. Yeah. So with the EVF, another fantastic thing is it keeps me in that bubble where the client leaves me alone. I love the client.
Yeah.
But sometimes I need to be just left to do my thing.
Yeah.
And if I'm messing with menu settings even, I'll do it via the EVF.
Yeah.
So the joystick is handy there.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, for autofocus and fast performance and changing modes, things like that, the screen.
What you're talking about there now, just using changing the menu setting in the EVF, that's something that, when people come into us and they're changing from a DSLR to a mirrorless camera, they're used to the optical viewfinder, they're used to seeing their shutter speed, their aperture and their ISO and their focusing point and not much more. Now you get everything when you look through the viewfinder. So as you say, if you are somebody who likes using your viewfinder, does not want to use your screen, you get the same information in the viewfinder as you do on the screen, so it makes doing everything so much easier.
And for accuracy, something I always knew would be the case. I didn't like EVFs in their early implementations. They were a bit CCTV-ish or something,
Yeah.
But and they did come a long way or whatever. But one of the other things with the EVF is being able to exposure, right? Getting your exposure right, because you can see the exposure you're shooting as you're shooting. You don't have to take the camera away from your face. You're still in the bubble, client is here, you're shooting and you're seeing your exposures as you need. But more than that, I found it helps to nail things like lighting ratios, because it's all very well, I mean, with high dynamic range raw files, if your exposure is hot or your exposure is too dark, you can tweak it later,
Yes.
Stop or two, not a problem. But the lighting ratio you can't really change without a lot of work. Whereas you can see, even if you're out in bright sunlight, shooting in Santorini, right? I was shooting with light and ambient light in Santorini. You can't see the screen in Santorini.
Yeah.
So the EVF, for example, not only could I see the exposure, but I could see the lighting ratio a lot more accurately in the picture.
Okay.
So things like that, I think that we kind of forgot were going to be a thing.
Yeah.
They've been a massive enhancement. And my hit rate and correction rate has gone down, my hit rate's gone up.
There you go. And this applies to, like, we're not just talking about the R5 here, this applies to all mirrorless cameras.
Pretty much.
Certainly the more recent ones that have the viewfinder similar in quality to a minimum of what the Eos R is.
Yeah.
Well, look, thank you for that.
No
that's gone into the gear there now and the equipment that you use. What we might do next is we move on to some of your photos. Now, before we move on to the photos, again, I'll just remind everybody that we are taking questions. You can pop your questions into the comments. I can see there's some there already. We will be going to them at the end of the section. So we've a section about Michael's photos, and then we'll do a bit more talking with Michael, and then we'll go to the questions, and Michael will answer them. There are some spot prizes for anybody who asks questions, so if you want to win yourself a prize, pop yourself on a question there in the comment section, and we'll see how we get on. We're going to move on to the photos now. There's 10 photos for us to talk about here, some of Michael's work. I will just say that Dean here is the director behind the camera. He's going to bring us through them. If you can hear me giving him a little bit of a nudge, it's because he's a little bit off form today after being off sick for a few days. So I'm having to double up as a director and a presenter here at the moment. But hopefully he'll get us through it and we'll be all right and ready to go. So Dean, if you wouldn't mind bringing up those photos, please, when you're ready. Now, so we're on to photo 1 there, Michael. Now, just before we go and talk about the photos individually, there's 3 distinct differences in the types of photos that we're going to see. There's maybe grouped into 3 or 4 of different types, and then even within those groupings there's maybe a subgrouping as well. So we'll touch on that as we go along, and we'll talk. So like the first 3 images that we're going to see are along the lines of your commercial shooting. And that's kind of where we're at. So the first one that we're looking at here now, that's up on screen for people who are watching, if you want to maybe just talk us through that and tell us where the setting came from, what the scene was, and maybe the equipment that you used to take the shot, if you don't mind, please.
Okay, yeah, this one, it was kind of a little bit of a chance shot for me. Now, just obviously to touch, obviously portraits mean so much, and I do pretty much some of every type of portrait, from from personal portraits through corporate into these kind of things.
And we'll see some more even in a few photos time.
Exactly, but in a short space of time, I thought it was a good idea, and I think we kind of agreed it was a good idea to stick to just say these 3 categories.
Yes.
But this one was, there's a company I shoot for, and they're one of my absolute favorite companies to shoot for. I do a lot of commercial and corporate stuff for them. And they had an event, summer party, and asked me would I shoot at it. So one of the reasons I love shooting with them is, if I was shooting an event like that, you don't just shoot the event for them, or I don't just do some commercial stuff. They would actually hire me for an additional job to get high-end portraits of people. And when I was taking a lot of portraits of the staff, they had this kind of like Havana Nights kind of theme. There was a band playing as well, who I just thought in front of the cars looked like an amazing quirky kind of fun setting. So I just grabbed them, asked them to come over into the lighting setup. I'd like 4 lights set up here. 1 to add to the sun, 1 to add an extra separation on the other side, and 2 kind of like front lights. And in close, really close, to keep the contrast quite high. But that was another thing that was just done on chance. It's not necessarily what they asked for, but they liked it. They were delighted.
And equipment was taken with?
That was probably a 5D Mark IV. I think that was, on memory, that was the 5D Mark IV.
Now, next shot that we're going on to, next shot will be on screen there now. And this is, again, would fall under the commercial side of what you do. But I'm not going to, you tell us about it there now, because you can tell us more than I can.
It's kind of commercial. It's like an extension. When you're shooting commercial stuff, you often get clients who'll ask you to do a bit of marketing stuff as well. Or in this case, I was asked to do this for editorial.
Okay.
Right? So this was kind of editorial, off the back of a big fashion event that happens every year.
I love the fashion sense, by the way. That happens every year.
Yeah, but it's not like I don't shoot it every year. I've shot it for a few years and then whatever and stuff. But the event happens every year.
Okay.
But the shoots don't necessarily happen. I was asked to do some shoots for them for a few years running when an agency who I do a lot of work for, they were running the event.
Okay.
So he wanted to make the agent wanted to make a bigger event out of it. So I kind of said, yeah, no problem, as long as I can get stylists and high-end clothing for like 12 or 13 models at a time. And so that allowed me to then do kind of like stuff like this, where we had stylists to style it to a very high degree. And, I was able to have my own control over the look and feel. And this one, for the whole editorial, I went with the tone of a kind of to make it almost look like it was shot on a Hollywood soundstage rather than on the quays in the old part of say the old Port of Cork with the old docks.
Yeah, and it really does. Like, I look at that, like, and some people say I was born in the wrong decade, like, because I watch programs like Boardwalk Empire. I don't know if anybody watching is aware of that, but the dress code and the whole way and etiquette that's around at that time, and I absolutely love it. Like, it really captures my imagination, and that's when I look at that, that's what I see.
And the stylists, to be fair, Martha and Jane, they brought it. I mean, I was thinking the concept I had was something along the lines of one of the Gene Kelly movies, or this kind of stuff and that kind of aesthetic, and the stylists absolutely brought it. So then on the day, that meant I kind of had to bring it. So there were 6 lights involved in that, all in really close again. And thanks to a bunch of people I knew, you know, who other photographers who would give me a hand as light stands, voice activated light stands.
There you go, that's nice. And again, just before, equipment that was used, you said there was 6 lights, and we will, as we go on through your photos, you'll mention lighting a lot, because you use a lot of lighting, you know, like as regards to to change the effect and bring something different to your photos. But as regards to camera and lens, roughly speaking,
this was either a 24-105 or a 24-70. I'm actually 90% certain it was a 24-105.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
On the 1DS Mark III.
1DS Mark III. Okay.
So I had that camera for quite a long time. I mean, this is how, you know, you get a good camera. It's a good camera.
If it does the job for you, why not? Now, okay. So we move on to the next one now. If you could tell us about this, how it came about.
Okay.
And
this one was a private commission.
Okay.
All right. Which kind of also fell into my own Fallen Angels concept, so I was able to keep it in as part of that, as well as doing it for private commission. And the lady who asked me to do it kind of said, I have a lot of friends coming home from foreign, and by foreign she didn't mean Cork or Dublin, you know, from proper foreign. But she said, would I get a creative shoot with them, kind of like the stuff I do for exhibition and things like that, rather than the more, say, commercial or editorially things. And I thought, yeah, fantastic. And she turned around to me at one point, because I said, how many people is there? And she said, there's 12 of us. We might never see each other again. This could be our last supper. And kind of like you could see, we looked at each other and the light bulb went off and said, well, I have a concept in my head of a last supper I want to do with a lot of women, so let's do that.
Yeah.
So we went on location outside Kilcrea Friary. I had the permission of the farmer. I'm probably unique in getting permission where in that location.
All right,
a lot of people, the farmer lives quite a distance away, so a lot of people just kind of invade. But yeah, there was like quite a lot of setup there. The girls themselves did a lot to source the costumes from obviously the Leonardo da Vinci source material.
Yes.
And then I just set it up. The background reflects my own concept. I won't say why we shot it there. We don't have time now. But literally, the guys practiced the poses for like weeks coming up to it, all of the gestures. They were sending like mobile phone pictures to me, and I was like, yeah, that works, that doesn't. And yeah, but it was great to shoot. It was bright sunlight that day as well, so to overpower the sun took quite a bit of effort.
And again, equipment that was used?
That was either the Eos R or the 5D Mark IV.
Okay, so a more recent. And again, lights. You mentioned lights again, like.
Yeah, I used 3 lights with battery-powered lights with as in studio lights. You know, with normal standard dishes on them to kind of like mimic the sun rather than I often go for a soft look, but in this case it was sunlight, and they were all positioned staggered from left to right to cover the whole group, as if lit mostly from the left.
Perfect.
So, just before, or from the right, I think.
Before we go any further, Michael, just the reason I'm mentioning lights a couple of times is that, you know, like we see these photos, some of the colours and the tones are quite unusual, and some of the lighting, it's not something you see every day. I think it's important to say here that as we're progressing on, that although these photos, like any photographer's photos, have been through Photoshop to be edited in accordance with your workflow, they're not manipulated in Photoshop in any way to look like this. This is work from the camera, more so than on the editing side of things.
Probably 99.5% of my stuff is single exposure. Yeah. There have been times for Dark Beauty magazine, for example, where they'd say, I need you in the winter edition, and it's July, and I need to shoot something. You know what I mean? So I will take some stock backgrounds that have snow in them, maybe, that I've shot for other shoots, and maybe make the odd composite. But generally speaking, like, this was shot and edited in the Adobe Camera Raw, and a few wrinkles taken out on the table, color balance tweaked, contrast, that's it.
But again, that's like, you know, to us that's workflow rather than manipulation, you know, as regards to, so I say it's important just to say that, because, you know, when you're looking at how good these photos are and what you can do out of camera, it does go to show you don't have to be a Photoshop whiz to get the type of stuff that you get.
I prefer to spend 2 extra hours on location having the crack rather than at the computer, you know.
Well, there you go, and your photos speak for the results of what you can get when you do that, putting the time and effort into it before you take the photo. Now, next one now. So this is going off a little bit onto a different style now.
This is into the beauty stuff. This was for a makeup artist, Zah McCarthy. Make Up Your Mind by Zah. Excellent makeup artist, very creative, loose and free with the application when necessary, and tight and technical when necessary as well. But Paulina, the model, when she came out, dressed pretty much, you know, and when I saw the actual look of the various shots that we were doing, I don't tend to use, say, coloured gels in every shoot, or I don't do shoots based on colored gels. Some people often do a shoot based on a technique or whatever. But I will pull out any kind of card or any technique to use to harmonize with the shot, and that there, the lighting is basically based on. In close front lighting, a teal gel on the right hand side and a red gel on the left to harmonize with the colors in the makeup. So I like to do that quite a lot.
When you say lights, Michael, again, Jan, you were talking studio lights.
Studio lights,
so not flash, like studio lights.
Both. I mean, some of the shots, I'm not sure if they're in here, but there are shots that I've done, even high contrast outdoor ones, which would have speed lights, the Canon speed lights. So both. Light, whatever light, I think it was Joe McNally said it, or somebody, he said at a lecture, was it... I can't remember who was giving the lecture when they were in college, but they said, what's the best type of light? And he said, whatever I have, whatever light is available. And then he said, so the best light is the light that's in my bag.
We'll put that saying down to Michael O'Sullivan anyway.
I was the first to say it with a Cork accent.
Well, there you go. That's good enough for us today. We move on to the next one there now. Again,
that one was 5DSR, by the way, just to mention.
Oh yeah, sorry.
For a lot of the high res stuff, I did move to a 5DSR before the mirrorless stuff came out.
Okay.
And the equivalent to me now would be the
R5 with the high megapixels, indeed. Now, next one again, beauty.
Hair salon stuff. Some years when there are hair events coming up, or if there's marketing needs to be done, I would get some work from, as part of the commercial side, from some of the larger hair salons, etc. And this is just an example of setting the lighting and the color of the gel on the background, and amber gel to match all the tones in the shot so that they're green fringe. Like you're asking the hairstylist, what's the important feature here? What do you want to see? So they wanted to see shine on the fringe, and like the rim light up here was all part of things they wanted to be brought out, up at the top of the hairstyle. But then a little bit of extra light on the green fringe, and it stands out against the amber background, so client happy. This one ended up on the cover of Professional Photo last February, for which I was really chuffed.
Absolutely, as you should be. You mentioned there, you asked the hairstylist what's important. We don't have that issue when I go to photo shoots. Not that I do modelling too much, but now just before we go, again, just the equipment that we use was a 5DSR again?
5DSR 70-200.
And you've mentioned that even on your R5 now, that's your go-to lens, so there's a perfect example
for this type of stuff, for compression and to narrow in the background, and to often I shoot a lot of corporate headshots as well, so you're going from the collarbone to the eyebrow, or for the more conservative companies, you're leaving some headroom. Yes. It's 70-200.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Now, next shot. Okay, different again. So when we look at this, first of all, fantastic photo. It's absolutely brilliant. But can you tell us a bit about it? Where this comes from? I've seen some of your work before, Michael. So I know that this type of stuff you do a lot of it, and printed large, it looks absolutely fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant, and really takes your eye no matter how many times you do actually see it. So again, if you wouldn't mind just telling the viewers that are watching about it, where ideas like this come from and what you do to set it up.
Okay, I've always been fascinated by fantasy and whatever, and I did a series of shoots based on fairy tale stories that had been ballets. So I partnered up with some people from Cork City Ballet. Now, both the dancers there are like really successful dancers in London these days, and they were in Cork City Ballet when I worked with them. So that's Linnea on the right and Anna on the left. And makeup was done by Noreen O'Connor. Amazing smooth makeup on. I mean, people often comment and say the lighting on the main character's face is great, and I'm like, no, it's the makeup. The makeup kind of makes that, But I wanted to do these kind of fairy tale stories that had been ballets. So, for example, Sleeping Beauty and Giselle, and this is Giselle. Right? So, but then, of course, I had this big idea in my head. If I was to paint this, because I used to paint a lot of fantasy stuff back in the day, if I was to paint this, how would I make it look? But then the challenge was, okay, is it possible to light it that way? So I filled the woods with smoke from 2 smoke machines. I had a couple of people to help me on the day, like Camus from Cork Camera Group, who's a friend of mine. He's an amateur photographer in Cork, but always happy to come and help, and a lovely guy.
Great.
But, and some other people, like the makeup artist Noreen gave a hand, the models who were off camera gave a hand, and literally filled the forest in Kilmurray Wood with smoke from the 2 high-powered smoke machines. So we had 2 petrol generators running as well. And I had a bunch of lights in the forest to create one set of lighting in the forest, and a whole different set of lighting to create that romantic fairy tale feel in the foreground. So just to create separation, like it looks like 2 different things. And then the model in the veil, she's playing the ghosty figure coming out through the smoke from the smoke machine. But 24-105 and a 1DS Mark III.
Okay, so we've a lot going on there, and as well as your camera and your lenses, say you have your assistants, you have your smoke machines, you have your lights, you have your human light stands taking direction from you. You've got everything, but we can see there now, like what you mentioned earlier on, you'd rather spend more time at the set than have to do stuff afterwards, and this is possible. This is out of camera again, manipulation. You know, obviously a small amount of editing. But this is what you do on set, on location.
Yeah, on this it was mostly like pull back some of the saturation,
Yes.
because I was shooting such high contrast and the clothing was quite vibrant.
Yes,
Pull back a little saturation,
yes,
up the contrast a touch.
Yep.
I tend to create natural vignettes where possible, and I'll often add a little bit to that with a radial grad or something afterwards. Okay. But I tend to create natural vignettes, like you'll see one later. I like to pick a background where I'm maybe shooting into some light as well. Creates a nice vignette feel, and it works for this.
Okay, great. Well, let's move on to the next one now, Michael, if that's okay.
Yeah.
So now,
speaking of help and assistance, this one I did on a workshop in Cork.
Okay.
And the people, obviously, when I do occasionally, I tend to have a waiting list for workshops, and I open up occasionally when I get some extra time or whatever.
Yes.
But I do a lot of shooting workshops on location, and when you're doing a workshop, you have plenty of assistance because everybody's there. So again, we had, people holding the light stands. It was quite windy, quite breezy. But then, like, what made these shots were having a really good makeup artist again. Noreen O'Connor was the makeup artist again for this, and the makeup. If it wasn't for the makeup being so smooth, I had to desaturate some colors, some reflections on the skin, etc. But other than that, the effect is mostly like it's achieved with makeup rather than not getting the effect and creating it in Photoshop afterwards. Now, I did blend in the tree textures in this because there were no trees in behind. So that's an example of the 0.05% where if I need if I have a slight brief, tweak.
Well, you've done a good job because I wouldn't been able to see that, so fair play to you. I tell you, all of the makeup artists you do work a lot, and they're all lucky to be working with you. You're doing a fair amount of them a plug today now. I hope they're paying you enough for the old mentions they're all getting.
I'm the lucky one. When people ask me how to get into this kind of stuff, my advice is always make sure you know a good makeup artist and work with, and give them what they need.
That's good.
And work with a good makeup artist because it's one of the most important things for your final
listen,
shot.
that's fantastic advice, to give people who are watching, because you may not be aware of how important people like that are to a set. Just before we go on, again, equipment.
5D Mark III, I think.
Okay.
24 to 105. Actually, those three shots, focal lengths are quite similar, but there's a possibility that one of them was 24 to 105 and two were 70 to 200 at 70 mil.
Okay.
So I would tend they'd be the two go-to lenses on 90% of what I've done.
Interesting.
For landscape or going wider, 17 to 40, 16 to 35, Mark II, whatever.
Yes.
Or the new 15 to 35, which we'll get to in a while.
RF, we'll see an example of that shortly. Yeah. Now, on to the next photo there, please.
Cool. Fantastic makeup again by Noreen. This is from the Fallen Angel series, so it's a little bit kind of based on that whole idea of these spiritual figures, otherworldly figures lingering in a kind of a holy place and whatever.
Yes.
It would take me an hour to get into the concept of it, so that's as much as I'll say. But again, based on trying to create contrast, all of the lighting on the pillars, the stones, the foreground, it's all artificial.
Okay.
The only natural light is really what's spilling in from the sky.
Okay.
And it's in the afternoon, and then there's even a backlight behind the cross that you can see creating a tiny bit of flare because it was kind of drizzly. So that helped create that kind of smooth effect in the background.
And as regards to, you were saying most of it's artificial light, like how many lights do you talk about here?
On that one, off the top of my head, I probably had 4 or 5 lights on that shoot, and I'd say there was probably 4 switched on in that.
And a question
and the smoke machine.
Smoke machines are very important.
Absolutely.
A question for you just there regarding your lights. Would you have an idea in your head before you go on to location what way you're going to be doing it? Or is there a lot of trial and error? Or what way do you do it? Because we would say to people now with digital photography, there's no cost to trial and error. So, you can try different settings and, get different results and see whichever one you prefer yourself. Would you have a kind of, like, for example, there's some older school photographers who would be, I shoot 125 at f8, that's all I do. You know, that kind of way. Yeah. We still hear that, believe it or not, in this day and age, we still hear that. But then you've got
people... Or the sunny F16 rule.
But we've also got stuff like this, which, is say 4 or 5 lights, available light as well, creating a very different and unique look. Would you know what settings you're going to be going on, or do you get out there and just you have a feel for the play? Is that just I
have an idea how I want it. Okay, especially for anything that has a concept in it, which includes some fashion and some advertising stuff. All right. The first thing I want to know is what way I want it to feel. okay, then that'll lead to things like contrast, tone, shape, things like that. So then in my head, I'm building that with background models, highlights, shadows, things like that. And that's as much as I have then though, right? I mean, it'll often develop to the point where there's lots of detail, but I always try to keep some little bit open. It's a good idea to go over the plan. And I always tell people, yes, go over the plan, but be prepared to flip the plan on its head if the location, the weather, if everything is completely different when you get there, if it's not what you planned. Like with the models on the keys earlier, that one, I was expecting a big cloudy dramatic backdrop. We didn't get it. There was a lot of blue in the sky. In hindsight, obviously I adapted and rearranged the colors of the models where they were standing, you know, changed the lighting slightly, but I think it was fortuitous because it worked out for the better. But it's an example of where you go expecting one thing, you have to adapt. What are you going to do? Come home with no shots? Yeah.
Well, that's, again, great advice, you know, like, I suppose, as you say, go with a plan, but a little bit of feeling there as well, like just for the environment you're in and whatever presents itself to you. Okay, we'll move on to next. We're getting close to the end of your photos here now.
We have two more, I think. This one and the last one, isn't it?
So,
this is recent, lockdown.
Recent lockdown, okay. Let's not talk about that for the moment. We're out of it, so let's keep it good. Let's keep where we're going, okay. So
the Eos R5. Now, all of the light in the foreground and on the church is artificial, right? This was shot with the R5 and the 15 to 35. And the reason I was shooting that day mostly with the 28 to 70. That's the F2, isn't it?
Yeah. That's a beast.
I switched to the 15 to 35 for this because these are Claire Garvey's outfits. This is Sarah Shoemaker. She's an excellent model in West Cork, and it was fantastic that she lived so close because it meant during lockdown we could go to the same ruin and I could take these shots. Now the recent when they eased things a little, but so that's Rathbarry Ruin, which was within our leisure travel.
You're okay if you're a few kilometres out. We won't mind. We won't.
I am the luckiest man alive where I live. The locations around where I live are absolutely amazing. But yeah, so that was with the R5 and the 15 to 35 then. But all of the lights, like the light on the church, I wanted to control what had light and what was in shadow.
Yeah.
So the light on the church, there are two lights lighting the church, two lights lighting the model. I think in that shot, one of them is switched on, and that's on a boom stand up over her head. And I'm literally shooting from underneath it quite close to get that quirky lean. From the ruin and from the model, so they both kind of lean in and make that kind of triangle. But again, it's based on, you know, like the R5 has amazing dynamic range, so it's important in a shot like this to shoot for detail, which is so much easier with like the R5 and the dynamic range that it has, because you can shoot into like high contrast settings, like where the sun was breaking through the clouds there, for example. And
just this is the first one that we've kind of come to that you're like, I know that was shot on an Eosr series camera rather than either a DSLR. And we can see, certainly to my eye, not that there's no difference, but you know, like people are wondering, can you tell the difference between a photo taken with a mirrorless and a DSLR? There's no difference to you there as regards to like you.
Only the fact that I'm more confident in, when I'm outdoors, like I said, judging the lighting ratios. Is this light the correct amount of, you know, stops brighter than that light? You can measure them and you can be an engineer about it. Okay. Or you can try go by how it looks, which is more important.
Yes.
So yeah, but having the feedback in the EVF when you have bright sunlight, and even in the evening, you're shooting in the evening when it's dark, no matter how good your LCD screen is on the DSLRs, it's going to look brighter in the dark than it really is. And no matter how it adapts or whatever. But with the, just being able to judge the lighting ratios with the mirrorless cameras is phenomenal. So you're getting as good, if not better, shots with the Eosr, and your job is slightly easier. Exactly. So there you go. The focus definitely much handier and better because I can move the model right to the edge of the frame and not have to do a recompose.
That's a very handy thing, isn't it? Again, for anybody watching you, it wouldn't be familiar with that. Your focusing point on a mirrorless camera can be anywhere from the top to the bottom to the left to the right corner, which is not possible with a DSLR. And for this shoot, I used eye detect. I can say that for sure. Now, a lot of commercial shoots I mightn't, but in this I used eye detect. And her face is tiny in the frame. I'm just looking. I can, if it worked on that well. That in itself is a perfect example of how accurate it's unbelievable. Really is. It's unbelievable. I was the person saying, I don't care about eye detect. I really don't. But no, I love it. No, I love it. Now you do. You don't need the joystick, but once you're eye detect, who would have thought that when you got your R5? Yeah, the eye autofocus is incredible, to be fair. Now, the last one that we're going to look at is the next photo here. Also Sarah Shoemaker in Claire Garvey's. Claire Garvey is an amazing designer, by the way, for anybody who is passing. Her shop is in Cows Lane here in Dublin. Oh, there you are, only up the road from us here. Exactly, an incredible designer, one of the most talented people I have ever met, and a lovely
lovely person. And I love shooting with her stuff whenever I get the opportunity.
Yeah.
So these are a cross between fashion, these two, a cross between fashion and fantasy. So they're like fashion shot in a fantasy sense, but they were literally driven by me rather than by a client.
Yes.
But occasionally I would use stuff like this then in either exhibition or for publication or whatever. But yeah, like good model, good styling, amazing location, and the gear. Again here,
Great
shooting.
photographer, you forgot that, Michael. Great photographer.
He wasn't available, so I did it. But for example here, the sun was just going down off to the right, okay? I was underexposing by a couple of stops, but the model's face was largely silhouetted, okay? So again, the autofocus, the ability of the the eye detect to pick up even in practically silhouette was outstanding.
And again,
which on a mirrorless camera people forget, your exposure affects your autofocus.
Yes.
But the Eos R5, no, I absolutely loved shooting with it.
And again, we're finishing up. It's an R5 and an RF lens. So
that one is 2870.
There you go, 2870 f2, fantastic lens. So that's the end of the photos there. Now we'll be coming back on camera in a moment there if Dean is doing his job properly. He did look a bit panicked there when we were behind the photos, so just make sure that we're still back on camera, and we'll continue when Dean is ready. So now we're back. Thanks everybody for paying attention there. Thank you, Michael. Your stuff is absolutely fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant. I think just before we finish up talking about your photos, something that has come across to me when we're going through it, and I say I am familiar with your work, having seen it before, is that it is for me a very good example of if somebody has photography as a hobby or has an interest in it, their work, so their commercial side of things or their day-to-day, what they're being paid to do, photography as their hobby will shine out. Their work will be better because you'll see that they're enjoying it, and their style may or may not be on it because like obviously it depends on what you're being commissioned to do. But if you do enjoy photography, if photography is a hobby of yours or was a hobby of yours before you start making money out of it, your photos will be better and your love of photography will show in your images.
Yeah, the best photographers in the world, right? Who I would aspire to be, to be able to carry their gear. Some of the best photographers in the world, they spend a lot of time shooting personal work.
Yes.
And I can say, apart from the fact that what you learn in your personal work, you bring into your commercial work and you get a unique stamp or whatever, you get recognizable for doing things your way. But apart from that, a lot of the best clients I've worked with over the years, or a lot of the best work I've got, has come from people seeing my personal work. So I can never underestimate people. I can never overstate to anybody who's working as a photographer, try keep up the personal work.
Okay, we're just going to move on to just talk about video for a moment. Before we do, last call for any questions there. If anybody has any questions, wants to pop it into the comments there. We have some spot prizes to give out. We have a few t-shirts, and we have something else from Canon there, a nice bag that I'll show you in a few minutes there for whoever puts up the best comment as chosen by Michael. So we'll move on to those after we complete the last section, which is just to briefly talk about video. So Michael, videography, you're a photographer, so like most photographers who do shoot video, they started off with I don't want anything to do with video, or I don't do video. It doesn't have to be I don't want anything to do with it, it's I don't do it. And now it's almost become something that maybe to say it's expected is a bit much, but a lot of times if you're commissioned to do something, you might be asked for, even if it's just informal stuff for social media or something like that, from a photographer, to have a little bit of video stuff there. I'm going to ask you, but I assume I know the answer, like, the mirrorless stuff, the Eosr, the R5, the R6, having that, I'm sure, has made shooting the video clips that would be required by you a lot easier.
Yeah. The switching focus between two different places in the frame, for example, instead of having the old days pulling focus and all this kind of crack. Since the 5D Mark IV, actually, that's been fairly seamless. But the difference is you're still often shooting. I don't bring external gear. I don't bring like, Atmos viewers or Atomos or any of this kind of crack. Because like I am primarily a still shooter.
Yes.
But on the occasions where I'm doing video, I try to stay as mobile as possible. If I'm doing a big corporate thing, I might have multiple cameras, etc. But generally speaking, it's either the LCD and the touch focus for pulling focus, changing focus, all this kind of crack has made it so much easier because it's so smooth, right? It is just so smooth. But the EVF is the other benefit, because half the time, because I don't use an external viewer, you can, it's like I said again, in bright light, for example, or out in sunlight, whatever, you can be a little bit misled by your LCD screen. Mm-hmm. So the EVF again has nailed the other thing, the other element apart from the focus, getting things like, making sure your frame is clean and getting your exposure accurate and nailing the focus and all this kind of crack.
Yeah.
So yeah, the mirrorless system has made it so much easier.
And is there anything you particularly like or don't like about shooting video with them, like as regards to apart from the fact it just made your life easier?
The image stabilizer in the R5 and 6, for example. I mean, there are times where I would have used the gimbal and now I don't, you know. It's like...
Yeah, well, you know, you're talking about staying mobile when you're shooting video. That is important. Dean, if you want to show people how mobile we are there at the moment, we're going to give you behind the screens view of where we are. We're not quite as mobile as Michael is saying there. We've got Natasha there. I don't know if she's in shot. We've got Dean there. You know, he was really playing a stormer there, I have to say now, after being out for a few days. So thanks to him for getting all set up, and we have Pierce there monitoring, make sure everything is going okay and that we don't drop out, you know, accidentally, or anything happens, we get hacked by anybody who's been hacking anybody recently. Could be the HSE, could be the Russians, we don't know, but Pierce is keeping them all out there at the moment. Thank you very much for doing that, Pierce. And Natasha is our bouncer on the door there, making sure nobody is trying to force their way in.
She's protecting me.
Don't know how much that was shown on the behind the scenes camera mode there. We just thought we'd put that scene in there just to kind of give people an idea of how the shop is actually set up at the moment. So now, Michael, before we move on to the questions, is there anything that we haven't covered that you want to cover or want to get in before we get on to what the people who are viewing want to ask us?
Honestly, not really. I kind of do. I'm on autopilot at the moment, so I'm sure somebody there will think of something I haven't covered, and if it's a question,
okay, doke. All right. Now, so we are going to move on to the questions. Before I ask the questions, I'm going to show you a couple of things. So we have 3 of these t-shirts here. Okay, so I'm holding them up to the camera there. So we have 3 of those. So we're going to give out 3 of those as spot prizes. And if you're chosen to win a spot prize, we will contact you after the video is finished. And we also have this Canon bag here, which will be the spot prize for the actual best question asked, which Michael will judge. Michael, you'll have an easy task, no doubt. Now, in order to get some questions, I'm going to be handing them here now because we are live, as they say. So while we're live, we'll just wait for the questions to be given. I believe we're going back to the mobile video, which shows that not so mobile at the moment there. So again, you can see what the store is looking like and how we've adjusted for today. So I have my assistant Natasha here handing me over the questions that have come in. So thank you everybody for your questions. So, oh my God, there is a hell of a lot of of questions here. So thank you everyone for sending them in. So I don't know if there is any duplication or not. So what we'll do is we'll just go through them as they were received, and we'll see if Michael has any answers. Some of them, if the answer is a bit long, we might contact you after the actual live stream if the question goes into a bit maybe too much detail, or if there's more detail that can be added to the answer afterwards. So Michael, are you ready?
I am ready, so as long as they're easy questions, and most of them are for you, I hope.
This is not a quick fire round. I'm sure there's one in here for me somewhere. There's always somebody ask me a question somewhere. But this is not a quick fire because we have an awful lot. So thank you everybody for your questions. We do appreciate it. Now, first question is from Joe McHugh. Hi Joe, how are you?
Hey Joe.
Hi Michael and Brian. Can the Eos 5D L series lenses be used with the mirrorless camera? The answer will be from both of us. Yes, it can.
A resounding yes.
So,
and you won't notice the difference.
You won't notice the difference. Yeah. The way it works is the 5D camera, which is DSLR, those lenses that go directly on there have an EF mount. The R series mirrorless cameras have an RF mount. So there is an EF to RF adapter. There are a few different versions. There's the standard one, which will just change the lens mount. Literally just change the mount, or there's the control ring adapter, which will also have the control ring in the adapter that's missing from EF lenses that is in RF lenses. Now, it doesn't affect your optics in any way, so the quality of the lens won't change, and it doesn't affect the speed of your focusing in any way. So all it does is change the mount and allows you to use it on your R series cameras. Next one, Emer McCormick. Really want to know what Michael's go-to camera is for his work. Oh, here we go. I think I know the answer to this, but go on, you can answer.
The best camera in the world, absolutely in the world, and I actually dream about it sometimes. I'm a bit of a gear geek. Okay. Is the Eos R5.
The R5.
It is the best camera.
Okay, there you
I
go.
still love the Eosr. Like yesterday, I did a lot of shooting with the Eosr, for example. There's like nothing wrong with the Eosr because it's got the lower res, and the R6 is the same, lower res. So when you need to get pictures out quickly.
Okay.
But yeah, the R5 is
your go-to,
the number one camera on the planet right now.
There you are, Garrett. Yeah. If you're watching from Canon, there you are. We got in again. The R5 is Michael's favourite camera. He dreams about and everything. So well done. Now I hope that answers your question, Emer. Thank you. Ian Hully has asked, What has been the most challenging shoot to date using Eosr full frame and why? It's an interesting question.
That's a tough question. Using Eosr full frame and why?
Yeah.
God, I can't think of anything that jumps out specifically because of the system, but I mean, every shoot has had challenges. Like, I give you an example. Yesterday, I shoot a lot of commercial stuff, but yesterday I was doing some PR, which is basically mean you're doing the press end of stuff that's going to press. So yesterday I was shooting for, say, Cork City Council, and I was shooting with just the Eosr actually, because I wanted the lower res, because these things were going to press immediately. So I was shooting the Taoiseach heading through an outdoor dining area in shade, lots of different colours of, from the different parasols, etc. I had eye detect on because I was thinking, okay, let's take a risk, put on the IAF, rather than constantly try to move and track points. And I felt challenged, but I ended up coming away with an incredible amount of hitters. The biggest challenge was editing it down afterwards because I shot like crazy. And that's not even the fastest camera, So the R6, R5 would be much faster, R5 would be higher res. But yeah, I mean, the shoots themselves, to be fair, there have been a lot of them that have been challenging. That just happens to be the most recent. And those were the challenges I remember. It was a difficult shooting, chaotic shooting situation. And even the Eosr nailed it. So the R5 performance is obviously superior again.
Great. Okay. Hope that answers your question there, Ian. Thank you very much. Now we're on to a question from Martin Nagel. I bought the Canon 5D Mark IV. Did I make a mistake? Should I switch to mirrorless? Now I'm going to answer this before Michael does, not say no, you haven't made a mistake, because the 5D Mark IV is a brilliant camera. Still a huge range of lenses available for it. And at the end of the day, it is a camera that will do almost everything for you all of the time. Michael?
I still have 5D series cameras in my bag. Amazing cameras.
There are things that DSLRs can do that mirrorless just can't. For example, we were touching earlier on, battery life, you would need more spare batteries with you if you're shooting mirrorless than with DSLR. Familiarity, just if you're more comfortable. I know myself, I'm getting to the stage where I'm getting a bit older. I'm more familiar, more comfortable with what I'm familiar with, a bit less adaptable to change. So that being the case, if you're like that.
And the 5D Mark IV gives you the best of both worlds to a degree, right?
Yes.
Because you have the optical viewfinder, so if you're comfortable with an optical viewfinder, it's a good middle ground because you still have an SLR with the optical viewfinder. But the live view performance is incredible on it. So the 1DX Mark III, the 5D Mark IV, they perform in live view like a lot of mirrorless cameras do as well.
Okay.
The autofocus to the edge, etc. So wider anyway.
The answer to that, Martin, is definitely no, you've not made a mistake.
Great camera.
Now, another question from Emer McCormick. Thanks, Emer. I'd love to know what setup you use for your live feed. The quality is unreal. Well, first of all, thank you very much. We've gone to a lot of effort. And there we are again, we're switching again. Dean's just shown off now, now that he's back on top form. Yeah, look, maybe what we'll do as regards to that particular question, Emer, is we'll contact you after, because there's a little bit involved in it, and there's also setup and software as well. So you're talking about cameras, lights, mics, software, how to go about it, so we can talk to you about that in more detail. We will be happy to help you and tell you everything we've used and what's essential and what's an option to make your life better for that. But I say we'll do that when we're finished. We might contact you directly on that. Sean Kennedy has asked, hi all, Michael, one camera, one lens, one subject, what makes your heaven?
Okay, one camera, obviously, like
the R5.
The R5.
There we go.
By a country mile.
Yeah.
By a country mile. One lens, I'd be torn between like the standard range, 24 to 105, 28 to 70 type range, or 24
what about the 2870
or the 70 to 200.
What about the 2870 f2?
Yeah, that's the one that last one on the beach was shot with.
Does so many things for you, like as regards to there's nothing else on the market like that.
This is true. It would be either, if I had to pick one lens, I'll have to say either that or, something in the 70 to 200 range. Okay,
and then one subject. I don't know if you can really answer that. You have so many fantastic models there and a lot of makeup artists you work with and stuff like that. We might offend them if you said just one.
All I'll say is fantasy. And that spills over into different markets then. The private stuff, the fashion stuff, editorial. So I'd always try to be creative in terms of storytelling. So yeah, I'd go for fantasy.
Okay. Next question from Ian Hulley again. Ian, thank you. Michael, what has been the greatest piece of professional advice you've ever been given during your commercial portraiture work?
Ever been given? So much. Okay, I'll tell you one. Actually,
maybe what we'll do is what's the best piece of advice you've been given, and if that is the same advice you would give to somebody else, or is there the best piece of advice you would give to somebody else?
Just because this one came to mind, right, in answering the question, I was asking a makeup artist to bring some blackout lenses for a model for a shoot because I use a lot of the black eye look in some of the angelic characters. And she said no. And I said, what do you mean no? It's like my shoot, and if I say we want blackout lenses, we get blackout. She said no. If the model doesn't wear them and you supply them and the model gets a scratch on her cornea or conjunctivitis or whatever, you're in litigation heaven. And I was like, okay, I'll Photoshop the eyes. So that was the best piece of advice I got, I think. But other than that, just, you know, I would tell people, if you are interested in getting into shooting with models or lighting or whatever, get to know a lot of photographers who you can have shared interest with, so you can help each other out with lighting, but also, you know, get to know a lot of models and makeup artists on Facebook. So build a network.
So rather than, you know, like we're talking about advice here, rather than you advice about gear or equipment, it's more about people and, you know, who you're working with, and build up your network. So that, you know, like you're not reliant on one particular person or one type of thing, like as regards to.
Exactly. And look, people make situations like this. I mean, like, you know, it's very difficult to operate in total isolation when you're doing stuff like this. So build a network. Build a network.
Okay. Hope that answers your question there, Ian. Now, the next is from Joy Buckley Flynn. What was the most disappointing thing you found about using the Eos R? Ooh, controversial here now, Michael.
Me? Okay. I did get disappointed with a lot of the buzz at the beginning, like, because I think Canon came out and headline spec was the 8K video, and I think a lot of people were expecting they could use it for long form 8K cinema work and all this kind of crack. Whereas for me, I was just kind of disappointed with some of the buzz and some of the chat that was going on the internet and like things like that. But I have to say, I haven't been disappointed with a single thing. Okay, one thing, the fact that you had to fork out for a CF Express card was a bit of a disappointment because they're more expensive. They are faster, but they're more expensive.
You have to know who to ask, Michael. If you ask the right people, we give you a good deal.
This is, you know, this may be true, but, you know, either way, little things like that. But no, the R5 is, I have to say, it's like, since the 5D Mark II, it's been the 1DS, I'd go back as far as the 1DS Mark III, actually. For me, it's a bit of a game changer. So for that to happen, it's like, it won't happen if there are disappointments in the camera for me. People talking about the overheating and things like this. I'm a hybrid shooter who's mostly stills. I do some oversampled 4K. I do a little bit of slow-mo so I use 120 frames per second, but I'm not shooting 15 minutes of 120. You know, I mean, that's an hour of slowed down to 30, you know, frames a second or whatever. So little bits of that here and there, little bits of 8K if I think I might need to crop and pretend I have multiple cameras. So generally speaking, it's been perfect for me. The R5 is perfect for me.
We're going now. Hope that answers your question there, Joy. We have a few more to get to there now, Michael. So, Deirdre Irwin, hi Deirdre, thanks for your question. Welcome, Michael. Do you do any preparation before a portrait shoot about the subject? Does this affect your lens choice if they're an extrovert or an introvert?
Yeah, I'll always try to have chats with people beforehand. In corporate situations, you can't usually do that, so I spend a couple of minutes. I always try to tell a company, leave a minimum. Like, if I can get somebody to come into me for an hour for their own session, for even a corporate session, which is rare because anybody who shoots corporate knows you get a CEO and an MD and a couple of senior managers, and they want to walk in, go click, 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 and walk out.
Michael. In here, you get the CEO, the MD, the manager, all in one. You don't have to go any further.
So you're probably even more rushed, right? So you walk in and it's like they want you to get it done in 30 seconds. So there are challenges, but I usually try to get a company to allow at least 15 to 30 minutes, even on a rushed shoot with people, because you do need to talk to them. Like, it's a little less important on the fantasy stuff, because some of those I'm creating a kind of a cold feel or a different character. It's more of an acting thing, But with, say, portraits, which, to be fair, I didn't show many of today. If you're doing personal portraits or corporate portraits, you need to get the person to come out. So engaging with them and talking with them is important. So the prep will be literally trying to get to know them, either beforehand or on the shoot.
Okay, next one. I hope that answers your question there, Deirdre. Thank you. Next one there is from Connor Ryan. Michael, what post-processing software do you use?
I edit my selection down in Bridge. I bounce them into Adobe Camera Raw, and I edit it from there. If I need to make PSDs and bring them into Photoshop to do a bit of cleaning up, then I go into Photoshop. But Lightroom for tethering, But generally speaking,
there is a related question here actually, sorry, as well, Michael, from Emer McCormick. Thanks, Emer, again. Michael, do you edit your own pictures yourself or outsource?
I edit my own. I edit my own. Because I've got so many bad habits, and bad habits give you a style, so other people will just not have my bad habits.
Now, okay, thanks guys, hope that answers your question. Last few questions here now. Joy Buckley Flynn, again another question from Joy, thank you.
Hey Joy.
So Michael, is the story in the photograph you're taking very important to you?
Yeah, sometimes it's kind of vague and it's a concept, and you're trying to capture a concept in an image, and those images you don't expect somebody to get it when they see the one image, but when they see a set, sometimes it becomes more clear. But yeah, like, even if I'm doing a fashion shoot or an editorial, I'll try get either the stylist or the agent or whoever it is to give me an idea of the concept or the story behind it. Pictures are about stories. I mean, it's as simple as that. Yeah. And I think it's obviously the most important thing in most stories, in most pictures.
If you like the story, you'd be more invested. Yeah. So, you know, that'd be what's going on. Okay, hope that answers your question, Joy. Thank you. Connor Ryan. Hi Connor, how are you? Not so much a question as a comment. Hope Dean isn't too under the weather. Go easy on him, Brian. Well, now Connor, if you know what's in here, you'd be well aware I am going easy on him, as opposed to what we can be like at times. So he's sitting down on the job today, which is more than the rest of us are allowed to, except for me, of course, sitting down here because I'm the host. But
to be fair, he's part of a slick, efficient machine today.
Thanks, Connor. Now, next question is from Keith Kennedy, friend of the store there. Keith, how are you keeping? I hope you're keeping well. Hey guys, Michael, what's the best lens or your go-to lens for the R5 that makes the best of the EVF aspect of the camera and for filming?
Okay, the first choice for me is often focal length. Yeah. Like, I don't use a lot of hyper wide. I don't need to shoot at f2 all the time. 28 to 70, awesome lens, whatever. It does affect, but obviously the wider apertures like that, the 85 1.2, the 28 to 70 f2, they'll increase the speed of your autofocus, obviously, because they give you more light into your sensor. But again, that's impacted by if you have exposure preview set and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. The detail apparent on your sensor will make a difference with that as well. But generally speaking, 90% of the time, because all the lenses are so good and the sensor quality is so good, it's about the focal length to do whatever I'm doing at the time. Yeah, perspective, focal length and framing are like the things I'll nail down first. Okay, no problem. Thanks, albeit that answers your question there, Keith. Now on to a question from Chris McCarthy. Hi Chris, how are you? Hope you're keeping well. Now, hi Michael, have you tried the FV setting on the R5? And if so, what are your thoughts, please? The FV setting? No.
Sorry about that, Chris. We can't answer that question.
I'm the kind of person, when I get a camera, I look up everything. Is it? And then just stick with what I need to use every day, kind of thing.
This is live TV, Michael. Yeah. People are doubting if this is live or not. This is
there live. You go. This is
live and unscripted.
I could be using it without knowing, you know. It's like.
Now, another question there, Monica O'Brien. Just wonder what lights Michael would recommend for starting out.
If you have flash guns, light is light, right? Yeah. Practice with windows, practice with the lights on the ceiling in your kitchen. Like, a lot of people have angleable spots in their houses now, whereas back in the day it used to be an orange bulb in the sitting room, which I practiced on.
Yeah, the old incandescent light.
Exactly, yeah, the old tungsten bulb hanging from the ceiling. But yeah, lamps. Yeah. Because all light behaves the same. Get used to learning what happens when the lights are closer, further away, when they're bigger, when they're smaller. Then if you have a flash gun, play around with the flash guns and moving it around and different angles. Like, if you want to learn, don't spend money on gear. Yeah. That's the first thing I'll say. I learned lighting in my sitting room with vases of fruit or vases of flowers and bowls of fruit or whatever, you know? Yeah. Figures on the table, things like that. Bouncing flash off walls and stuff like that.
I think this goes back to, Michael, what we were talking about when we're actually looking at your photos. Yeah. Which is, you know, like, by doing that, by practicing with that, like, you know, it just by going out and spending a lot of money on you know, studio lights or LED lights, if you don't know how to use them or you know, you're kind of aware of what they can do and how they can make your photo, the money spent on them is not going to make any difference. And I asked you when we were looking at your photos, you know, like, do you have an idea? And you said, well, I have an idea when I go out what I'm going to do, but I also get a feel for the place when I get there because I know what the lights are going to do and how I change them. And that kind of is going back to this here, you know, like, it's not really, you know, like, the lights, it's what you do with them.
Yeah, people think about light and exposure, but there's more to it than that. get to know how lights behave, and you can do that with anything, with a window, right?
Yes.
You can learn how light behaves with a window. So get to know how light behaves, and then how you can control it. And then when you need the power, buy a bunch of monoblocks, you know?
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. I hope that answered your question there, Monica. John Leahy has asked, hi Michael, I like to travel a lot and find a combination of EF lenses and 5D Mark III are cumbersome. If I invest in mirrorless and retain EF lenses with adapter, will I notice any major improvement? I want to lighten the load, love the images and their creativity. So, well, Michael, thank you for your comments there. Michael's images getting more compliments even in the questions.
They're just being nice. So,
now,
John, yeah, look, one of the benefits to most people, which to me is, okay, even to say earlier, is there a disappointment with the R5? No, but I just wish Canon would make the cameras bigger.
Yeah.
I come from the 1 series cameras, you know.
And they say size doesn't matter, Michael. Now, come on.
We all say that, you know. It makes us feel better. But I like the camera slightly bigger. But I think for example, when the R3, all the rumors about the R3 and the development announcement and stuff, battery grip, I put a battery grip on all my cameras.
Okay.
Now, obviously, the mirrorless cameras are a little smaller. Going traveling, yes, they're a bit more compact. Like, I do find it makes a difference in my bag. But you will not see a difference. You will not see a drop in performance just because you're using a good EF lens with the adapter.
Yeah.
Especially the more recent generations of EF lenses on the adapter. In fact, you'll have all the benefits of, you know, you might get 90-something% coverage instead of 100 on some lenses or whatever, but you'll see all the benefits of the mirrorless type autofocus system.
But the question that John is asking there about it being cumbersome, like the R5, although it is smaller slightly than a 5D Mark IV, by the time you have the EF to RF adapter there, it's not worth changing for size in that situation.
That is true. That is true. And I think the question he's asking is, would it be a drop in performance or something as well?
And would you notice any major improvement?
Oh yeah,
you get the
benefits.
Because you're going to get the benefits of the R5 and everything that's there, but not worth for the size. It will be the benefits of what it does rather than the size.
Exactly. No, and for me, like I said, that's pretty much. I will hope they make them bigger.
Okay. Now on to the next one. Lee Hully has asked, Michael, you mentioned earlier about keeping and deleting images success ratio with Canon over the years. Is there a specific deleted image on a shoot that you wished you had the Eosr mirrorless camera for, and why? This probably goes to your hit rate. Just for anybody who's watching doesn't know what a hit rate is, your hit rate is how many photos am I going to keep as opposed to how many photos are going to go straight to the bin when you're on a shoot.
Yeah, there have been times over the years where I would look at a shoot and most of the shots are razor sharp, and some of it comes down to me. It's not necessarily the gear. I mean, none of us are perfect, but there have been occasions where I pull out a shot and I'm like, yes, I love that one. And then when I zoom in, it's not critically sharp. And depending on what it's being used for, that might mean eliminating it. I can't remember a specific one, but they're there, like, they have existed over the years. But the only thing I can say is I'm a lot more confident, you know, as the years have gone on, even more and more, you know? Yeah. But specifically with the fact that I'm not, where it often happened was, it's not that you'd be necessarily out of focus because you're focusing, but when you were focusing and recomposing a lot, the closer the subject is, that cost me some shots. They just wouldn't be sharp enough then, because as you move the camera, the distance varies when they're in close. But not having to focus and recompose is one of the big reasons for nailing the hit rate.
You've mentioned there, off on a slight tangent, but an example we've been given by customers of ours who are wedding photographers, have used the example of the bride walking down the aisle for the hit rate. So for example, when they're shooting mirrorless now, they can, if they have a camera that has eye autofocus, they'll turn it on. If the camera has face detect, they'll turn that on. Or even if it doesn't, they'll just choose the point. And their hit rate of the bride walking down the aisle is now almost 100%. So the autofocusing system on the camera they were previously may not have been able to do that. So the one they really wanted, which is exactly what you're saying, you say that's the one I really want,
and that
you don't get to use it. And just as we're talking about that, we get somebody cleaning the footpath going by outside. So if anybody thinks Dublin City Council don't work, they don't normally, but they are today while we're live. So if you can hear that, apologies.
It's good to see it happening. It's good to see them doing it. But the other, an example of what you said there as well, for people who shoot wildlife.
Yes.
I've done a fair bit of birds in flight and stuff as well.
Okay.
When I'm off, I shoot all sorts of travel, nature or whatever, but birds in flight, because the animal AF, yes, it nails that just as well as the human stuff does. And that massively increases hit rate, because often shooting birds, you'd have the body sharp, and if your point wasn't directly over the eye, the eye maybe is slightly off. So that helps nail the eye.
Great. I hope that answers your question there, Lee. Another question there from Conor Ryan. And Michael, do you use filters to get the effect in the sky?
Sometimes if I want to keep, generally speaking, no. What I do to get the effect in the sky is 9 times out of 10 I'll point the camera at the brightest part of the sky and I'll expose for that, which makes the sky go dark. And often if you're shooting into the light and the aperture isn't too small, you'll get a vignetting around the edge as well, right? So I would generally speaking shoot into the, like with the second last shot, the girl with the Claire Garvey gown and there's a bright part on the left, I expose for that left part of the sky, which means any of the dark shadows opposite the light, even close to it, go very, very dark.
Okay.
And the foreground went completely dark and everything else goes dark because I want to try keep the detail in the sky and then light what I can.
Okay, I understand.
Occasionally, would I put a grad on afterwards in post if I need to accentuate the fall off to the top or something like this? Yeah. There have been times where I've used a graduated filter on the lens, like in places like when shooting in Santorini, I've done that, as long as the model is below it. But generally speaking, no, I try to keep the frame open. Okay. If I need to use a wide aperture, I will put an ND filter on or something. Okay. But I prefer to have as little in front of the lens as possible. Perfect.
Okay, we're down to last 4 questions there now, and we're way over time now, I have to say, but there's so many questions, we want to answer them all. But we do have to come to the end because we have a queue forming outside the store now of people looking to come in and buy, spend their money with us after viewing. Hopefully they're watching this live outside and they understand why the shop is closed at the moment. But sure, if they're not, we'll just have to explain to them when they're in what the delay was. So now we have a question from Deirdre Irwin. Michael, how do you stay excited about your work and keep the magic alive?
That's a good question. It's easy to get not excited about it when you're not shooting. So it's like comes back to what I said earlier about personal work. Keep reminding yourself what inspires you. Yeah, for me it's mythology and stories and fantasy. So, that inspires me more, so I keep in touch with that. And also force yourself to get out and do a shoot when you're off, and that will keep you motivated.
Okay, hope that answers your question, Deirdre. Thank you. A question from Anne Francis. Michael, I am looking for a lighter camera. Would you recommend the R5 over the R6? It would actually be the other way around. The R6 is a lighter camera than the R5. Yeah. So if you are interested in a lighter camera, the R6 would definitely be the one to go for. And if you do want to come in to us or call us or email us, we actually have Natasha in here who's behind one of the cameras at the moment. She has an R6 and she will tell you all about everything in the camera. She knows it from top to bottom, left to right, start to finish. She absolutely loves it. So she will be able to go through everything with you if you have any questions.
And the 24 to 105 general purpose lens as well is quite light.
Yeah, okay.
Compared to the older lenses, it's quite light. So now, and that adds to John Leahy's, John Leahy, if it's the guy I'm thinking of, his question earlier. Yeah, adding, if you did have a mirrorless and no battery grip and put a 24 to 105 on it, it is quite light.
Okay, last 2 questions, and then Michael, we're going to do 3 spot prizes, and I want you to pick out which the best question was from this. Okay, now, so both of the last questions are from Tomas Tyner. Hi Tomas, how are you? So we have 2 questions here, Michael. Do you miss the smaller RAW options, like in the 5D Mark IV?
No, I almost never use them.
There we go.
You don't save as much space as you would if you were shooting a camera with a native lower ISO. So I'll always try to have one camera which has a native lower ISO.
There we go.
My attitude as well is I like to future-proof. So I always shoot big if I can, if I think it's something that I might need bigger. So I shoot full-size RAW, no matter what it is. So if it's a lower res camera like the Eos R, I shoot full-size RAW in that.
Just buy that expensive CF Express card you were talking about, Michael, and then you'll be sorted. You don't have to worry about small RAW. And then the last question will be from Tomas as well. For your PR stuff, do you shoot RAW? Maybe with JPEG as well, or RAW only? Or then use the JPEG if it's on the money for a quick turnaround with RAW if needs be?
No, I shoot RAW, even for the PR stuff.
We have a t-shirt that says that. I shoot
RAW, exactly. Jared, is it? I just shoot RAW. If it's on the money, you can export it, caption it. I edit in Bridge so I can caption and export just as easy as if it was a JPEG, because you're going to have to resize it anyway. Okay, right. Now, that is the end of the questions. That is the most questions we've ever gotten from one live stream, so thank you very much everybody for those. We got through them all as far as I can see. If more came in, apologies that we missed them. So before we finish up, we're going to have 3 spot prizes. Now what we're going to do is we're going to contact people after the show regarding those. We'll send you a private message and we'll get one of the t-shirts out to you. But for Michael, the best question, what was the question that had you thinking most there? And we will give this lovely Canon bag They're all good.
the winner.
They're all good questions, but
right
the one that challenged me a little bit, I think, so therefore stands out, is what was the best piece of advice about your work? Well, apart from, I think I answered it honestly, but the best advice was probably somebody maybe telling me it was rubbish.
Okay.
But that question about what was the best piece of advice you were given about your portrait
and
photography.
that was earlier on the question. That was from Ian Hully. So Ian, well done. Thank you for that question. We'll get this bag out to you, and we'll contact you after the show, and we will make sure that we get out to you over the next few days. Now, well, that's a wrap. I think looking at the time here now, we've only gone about half an hour over time. So that's not too bad. If you know Michael and you've worked with him before, you'll say that getting an hour and a half into an hour is not too bad. We've been known to go 2.5 hours over with Michael because
I think this time it was your fault, though.
It probably was.
I think you sounded very engaged this time, Brian.
But look, in fairness, we're so lucky to have you here. And
pleasure.
As regards to the questions that people had, and as regards to getting the information out there, all very important. I don't think there was anything that we could have actually left out or shortened down. So it worked, and as I say, we've got in and got out as quickly as we could. We're going to wrap up now. So thanks to the guys in Canon Ireland. As you say, this is part of Canon Week, which is being run this week. It ends at the weekend. There are some special offers on Canon cameras, particularly the R5 and R6, which we've been talking about, and some more F lenses. As regards to that, if anybody wants to buy anything or wants to come on to us, we can do trade-in bonuses. We can give discounts. Apart from that, if you have any other questions or any issues you want to talk to us about, if you have questions about the live stream, you can contact us directly after this, and we'd be happy to help you. I'd like to thank Michael hugely for coming up to us from the People's Republic of Cork today to make this easier for us to do, and it was great to have him in the store. It's brilliant to have people coming into us again. The store is open if anybody wants to come into us. We're going to have to sign off here now because the queue is getting bigger and the people are going to start banging on the door soon. So we do have to stop and get back to our normal day job, which is actually serving customers that come into us. So thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Thank you, Canon Ireland, for organising this. And we hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you again soon for another live stream. This is Birmingham Cameras signing off on our live stream. Thank you.
Thank you.